Hi, this is Marlene. A warm welcome from Glasgow, Scotland to all around the world. In this series of Marlene and Friends, I'll be sharing with you the most amazing group of people who have all the skills and expertise to make our world one of health and peace for all who live here, humans and non-humans alike. Since 1967, Californian Bill Tara has been an active advocate for natural health care. He was the Vice President of Air One Trading Company, one of America's first national distributors of organic foods, and was a co-founder of Sunmeal Natural Foods here in London. Bill's been a health counsellor, teacher, author, entrepreneur and creator of health education centres in Europe and North America. His innovative and creative teaching of traditional approaches to health, healing and personal development has taken him to over 20 countries as a seminar leader. He's appeared on a variety of radio and television shows in England, America and Australia, speaking on dietary policy and the environment. In 1975, he edited and published Your Face Never Lies, based on the teachings of Michio Kushi, which continues to be one of the most popular books on Oriental diagnosis. In 1985, he published Macrobiotics and Human Behaviour, an absolute classic, the first book by a Westerner on the Chinese theory of the body-mind connection. His latest published books, Portal of Dreams, which is his first novel, and Natural Body, Natural Mind are available worldwide on Amazon. Hi, I'm Marlene Watson-Tara in Service for a Healthy World. This week I'm delighted to welcome William Wallace Tara, co-founder of the Kushi Institute and founder of the Community Health Foundation in London in the 70s. For 50 years, yes, 50, Bill has been a beacon of light in the world, educating and sharing macrobiotics, and has taught in over 23 countries. For those of you around the world who may not know Bill, he is in fact my lovely husband. Now, I don't like to use the word old-timer husband, but, sorry. Reality is reality. But talk about being before your time. I know that the Community Health Foundation in London was the most successful alternative health education centre in the world at that time. That takes me to my first question. If we look back to what you actually created in the 70s, and so many scientists and doctors are now, recommending a diet that's very similar to what macrobiotic teachers like yourself have been suggesting for over 50 years. How do you see macrobiotics as being different, and what do you feel the more ancient systems of healthcare have to offer?
Well, it is true that that's kind of a scary parallel to what is being offered and presented now in terms of plant-based diets, and what myself and other people, other teachers who were involved in macrobiotics were putting forward 50 years ago, and what Michio Kushi was teaching back in the 1960s. And it's very interesting that those two paths have kind of come together now, particularly given the fact that macrobiotics was so ridiculed during much of that time.
Sure.
As being dangerous, and you have to have more protein and this and that and the other, and now we find ourselves very, very close together indeed, and it's really great. I mean, it's fantastic that that people like Colin Campbell and Dr. Esselstyn and John McDougall, people who you've interviewed before, have put this forward, and they're not the new kids on the block. Colin Campbell has been around forever, right, doing this work, and has John McDougall as well for decades. And so it's fantastic that those conclusions have come to, and there's no reason for us to say we told you so. But it does show a couple of interesting things. One of them, and the most interesting to me, quite frankly, is the fact that none of these doctors, to my knowledge, and certainly not to me, have ever said, how did you guys figure that out? Or where did
Yeah.
See, which is a question that I would ask. I mean, if I was doing scientific research and all of a sudden I saw somebody from Papua New Guinea, it came up with a document that said this is what we've been doing for the last 5,000 years, I'd be kind of curious as to how they came to that conclusion.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, do you feel there's a problem with nutritional science?
Well, in one sense, there is, right? And the problem goes back to that question as to why there's no curiosity. Um, Much of the resistance to macrobiotics over those years, when it seemed like we were tremendous outliers in terms of nutritional conclusions, nutritional suggestions, was because of the way that we came to the conclusions. And it's a difference between the methods of scientific inquiry and a more ecological or primitive approach to understanding health and to understanding nutrition. And so that's where the critique came. Well, it's not scientific. And so it's very interesting now because it would be easy to say that in society, nutrition or science rather has become almost a religion.
Yeah, I would agree.
There's kind of people say, well, where's the science? Well,
Mm-hmm.
science is great, and I applaud people who do scientific inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
But there are two problems with it. One is a problem with reduction to science itself, and that is that it's all about taking things apart. And so, in terms of nutrition, what happens is we get focused down on micronutrients, and we lose the vision of the food itself. And so people become obsessed with micronutrients. The second problem with that is that just because we discover something, it doesn't necessarily mean that we know how to use it. And a lot of what happens in science now is a problem of usage.
Yeah.
So how do you utilize the science? And this goes across the board with every particular science. So we've become very, very good at getting information and getting knowledge, but not necessarily in wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And wisdom is what's about application.
Exactly, and I feel that myself when I'm teaching and doing particularly cooking classes. People think you need to be a biochemist in the kitchen. I mean, people, before we had classifications of fats, carbohydrates and proteins, people just ate what was available locally, seasonally, and that's why I embrace the beauty of traditional Chinese medicine in terms of the 5 transformations of energy, which Macrobiotics teaches. For me, it's so beautifully expressed. That's all you need to do to follow a healthy pattern.
A lot of it does have to do with language too.
Yeah.
Those traditional systems are very poetic.
Mm-hmm.
They use a language which is accessible to the feeling state, how people feel about things. How do you feel about the food that you eat? How does the food that you eat make you feel,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to analyzing it? And it's crazy to turn our backs on hundreds of thousands of years of personal experience on the part of our ancestors. And in the case of Chinese medicine, Indian medicine, Ayurveda, these are traditions which diligent records were kept for thousands of years. People were keeping records. They were studying. They were reflecting. They were seeing how things worked out. And so these traditions really need to be looked at very seriously, as long as some of the less sophisticated systems of healthcare that come from indigenous people, in terms of the use of herbs and other plants.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's such a beautiful way to express life, and as you know, I'm a huge proponent of traditional Chinese medicine, living with the seasons, macrobiotics, but also even going beyond that. The whole vegan lifestyle for me is, as you know, you live with me, what really makes me tick. Bill, I wanted to talk to you about, because I know you teach so much on environmental issues, and if we look at the huge scale of environmental problems and we put them together, it almost seems insurmountable. Our ecosystem that sustains us as a species is in huge trouble. How do we get back to sustainability? Can we even reverse the damage?
Well, reversing the damage is a big task, but certainly we can slow it down and put a stop to it if we wished to. Right? And so the problem with environmental issues is that these are reflections of consciousness. It's our consciousness that's the problem. Our actions come out of our consciousness.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting statement on where we put value in the world. What's of value to us? And particularly over the past 2 centuries, we've moved further and further away from our source in terms of acknowledging our relationship to nature. And this is very important in terms of the whole conversation about health, because when you look at health from an environmental point of view, you're really talking about how the organism creates balance with the environment. Right? And that relationship to the environment gets left out of the conversation. That's what homeostasis really means. Yeah. It has to do with the relationship of the organism to the environment. And so we need to start asking ourselves that question. And one of the problems is that that we don't live, most people don't live in the natural environment. They do, but they don't. The environment's still there. Your body still knows when it's nighttime. Mm-hmm. Your body still knows when the birds are singing. Your body still knows when it's cold outside. It doesn't even make any difference if you're in an overheated apartment or a department store. There you go. Your body knows that. And yet, the environment that we're most conscious of is the built environment. And so that's an environment that you almost could say that we're trying to make balance with that, and the balance with that is artificial food, because it's an artificial environment. Yeah. So artificial food is created out of an artificial environment, and we're trying to make balance with this artificial environment, but we're just not wired that way, right? Because we're talking about hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution. And our body still wants to respond to the environment because that's its home. That's the source of its being. Right? And so we got a big disconnect here. And we have to keep promoting the things that will make us conscious of the environment. And food and nutrition is one of the keys. It's like a bridge to the environment. Because when you're eating good quality food, which is created out of healthy soil, what you're doing is you're taking the environment in. And that may sound too mystical for some people, but it's not mystical at all. It's a direct relationship. And it's interesting that when we look at environmental issues, what we see is one of the most profound differences that people can make in directly to solving environmental problems like climate change is to change their eating habits. Yeah. When they change their eating habits, a lot of those things start to move into the age of repair, right? So the damage to the soil, the damage to the atmosphere, the damage to the oceans and to rivers and lakes, the damage to all organic life in the planet really is very closely related to what we eat.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing an interview the other day with a fabulous Dr. Bruce Monger from NASA. Right. And his interview will be out in a few weeks, everybody, so tune in for that one. And he said exactly just the same. He eats from the environment. So what we do to the environment is where we get our health. And you know, the segue for me into the next question that I want to ask you is, we are the first generation expected to live less than our grandparents. And just as you said, you know, the diet, the human evolution, the diet of humanity has changed beyond all recognition, particularly in the last 50 to 100 years. And what we both teach, and many people like us around the world, that diet accounts for 85% of all the non-communicable diseases. Do you feel the message is gaining momentum? You know, is there a way to not only prevent, but also permanently reverse this lifestyle diseases?
Well, yes, I definitely think there is. There is. It's a positive. And is there change? Yeah. When I started eating macrobiotically in 1966, next year is my 50th anniversary macrobiotically.
Fantastic. This is 2016.
Right.
So it's this year.
But yeah, but it's a couple more months yet. Right?
Okay.
So I'm very official about this.
Sorry, husband.
So when we started, most of the food wasn't available. We had to really go searching for food, and sometimes to pet stores. You know, I mean, because millet. We saw millet written about. You know, where do you get millet? We thought, oh, wait a minute, don't they feed that to budgies? They feed that to birds. So, you know, I mean, it was that kind of, which was exciting and fun. Yeah. But now you get those things in supermarkets. that food's available. And I can remember when I worked with Erewhon in the 1960s, late 1960s, when we tried to take some natural food products to supermarkets for sale, they laughed us out the door. They said, "This is crazy. We'll never sell this stuff." And I remember we were so happy when we got some of our peanut butter in a Safeway store. We thought we just made this huge breakthrough. And now you see like aisles in some stores, and in fact now you have natural food supermarkets, right? So these changes are happening, but they really aren't happening fast enough, right? And one of the reasons that they're not fast and not happening fast enough, in my humble opinion, is that people have a tendency to take something like this, they start eating differently, they realize the benefits from it, but they don't communicate it. They realize that they've become outsiders.
Yeah.
And so they kind of hide away with it rather than taking it out into the world. So we really need to become more ambassadors.
Exactly.
For healthy eating and healthy living and a healthy consciousness out into the world without becoming smug about it or self-righteous. Just, this is what we're doing. We're happy with it. We're comfortable with our eccentricities, and we're happy to share it with other people. And if we do that, there's enough people that are going to get turned on to it. They're going to start making the change.
I mean, the thing for me, I don't have there's no dogma. I don't have an overriding theory to prove, what I'm doing is right. But I mean, I do care about people having wrong information. And as you know, last night we were actually watching something in television, and the presenter was waxing lyrical about his high protein diet, how he's lost so much weight. You must get rid of carbs. Well, okay, it's like a red rag to a bull to me, but that's not how I approach. So I take the time and I go contact all these people. As you know, I write to the whole world every day. Bill Tara laughs and says I spend my life writing to the world. Because I'm trying to get people to connect the dots. And, I sent a tweet to him and said, please look at my website, listen to some of the interviews, look at the research on the China study. And I get this answer back immediately. I completely disagree with you. I'm following the Swedish government's recommendations. Well, yeah, the Swedish government's probably got some scientist in there that was paid a lot of money to write that. So
how dare you accuse them?
I know, but I'm not doing that to prove that I'm right. I'm doing it to say, please, you'll make yourself sick. Google the word ketosis and see what happens. It's impossible. You cannot live without carbohydrate. It's who we are. It's what fuels our body. It's where we get our brain energy. So anyway,
this is just for your audience for these interviews. This is what I live with every day. Sitting on the couch, tweeting Jonathan Ross about his innocent statement about protein.
No, because he's going to make himself sick, and I was just trying to guide him in the right direction.
I know. I'm sure he appreciated your guidance.
No, he didn't. Anyway, I continue to write to the world, and that's why I'm connecting all these people together right now for this Marlene and Friends series.
Yeah,
and two things I did forget to flag up at the beginning, husband. Thank you for telling me that I keep swinging in my chair, so I have changed. I have changed the chair, and I'm sitting very patient and very quiet and very still. And,
this is how Marlene would do her interviews.
Yeah. I get so excited about chatting to people. The next thing I wanted to look at was world hunger, which is something, obviously we're all hugely passionate about trying to help alleviate. So, at the moment we know there's nearly 1 billion people eating themselves to death through all these non-communicable diseases. There's 1 billion people starving to death, which is just quite incredible in this day and age. It's just unbelievable. So not only are the food choices of meat, dairy, eggs and fish, which people have at almost every meal, sometimes 3 times a day, are completely out of control, but they're out of control in terms of the cost of healthcare, the primary cause of climate change. They're also the leading drivers of water scarcity, soil erosion, species extinction, ocean pollution, deforestation. I mean, world hunger, I could go on and on. So would you share with the audience what you're currently teaching on solutions to world hunger in your online nutritional course that will be available soon, called Eating as If Life Matters, along with your book and part of our Human Ecology project? Share,
Yeah, I
please.
mean, well, there's a couple of things here. One is that we don't. There are certain questions we don't like to hold in our mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of them has to do with hunger, and this goes back a long ways. I can remember my mother actually telling me, "Eat your dinner because there are children starving in China,"
Yeah.
right? So I mean, those were words that came out of her mouth. I think that we don't personalize that a lot. An image that comes up to me sometimes is what would it be like if you were out in a park somewhere and you were having a barbecue, like an American barbecue, and everybody had all the salads and the fixings, and they were grilling their meat and all of the rest of it, and then they all looked up and there were 100 people sitting not more than 10 yards away who were in starvation. What would your response be? Now, I really do think that most people would say, oh my God, we have to share some of this food. We have to give some food because we certainly don't need it because you know, we're obese. We
Yeah.
don't need this food. Give it to these people who are starving. I really do believe in my heart that most human beings would do that. The other part of that is that we don't ask some big questions. And one of those big questions is, what is health anyway? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about this a little bit a moment ago, but you know, when we talk about balance with the environment, right, we're not only talking about balance with the environment in terms of the planetary environment. Part of that environment is human society, it's the tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we eat and when we choose the foods that we eat, there are a number of criteria that show up to me that I think should be very, very much included in the whole conversation about nutrition. One of them is the ecological impact of the food that we eat. Interesting in several attempts by the American government or by committees in the government to include environmental action into dietary guidelines, the food industry went bananas, right?
Yeah.
The food industry absolutely did not want any mention of environmental impact in food because they were afraid that it would sway people away from certain foods. But that needs to be there.
Yeah, it does.
Slavery needs to be there. Food slavery is rampant in the world. A lot of the foods that we eat, it would be impossible for us to eat. And when I say us, I mean society. It would be impossible for us to eat if there wasn't slavery on the other end. So you can almost always believe that if something is really, really cheap in terms of food, somebody didn't get paid, right? So it was either a lack of pay or tremendous impact on the environment. So those are things that need to be considered. Health costs need to be considered. Everybody pays for health costs, whether it's directly paid by a government agency like it is here in the UK, or whether it's a private payer or an insurance company. Everybody pays for sickness. And a lot of the sicknesses that we pay out billions of dollars for every year are totally preventable. Well, what does that say about us as a society? That somebody can eat food that makes them sick, and it's known that it makes them sick or it creates a disease like diabetes, right? Which is reversible within a very short period of time, as we've both experienced and as we've seen in workshops that we've done, where we'll be able to reverse diabetes in a couple of weeks, right? What does that say about society that they will continue supporting that? And then talk about the absurdities of sugar tax or this and that and the other thing. I mean, it becomes a nonsense. So we need to broaden out our understanding of what health is and what nutrition is and start having an adult conversation about it. Because right now, it's not an adult conversation. It's a childish conversation about what we like to eat. Well, I like that, and so I want my yum-yums, and so I'll just continue eating this food regardless. And it's really like putting your hands over your ears and saying, no, 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 I don't want to hear that information, right? It's too challenging to me, right? We need to get over that one. Right?
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I have, as you know, you live with me every day. My little warrior spirit soars every day because I have a mission. And, we're excited about the future as we continue to build an army of supporters and so many fantastic comrades around the world. Many of them I have been interviewing. all pushing out together. Each individual has their own theory, whether it's a little bit of salt, a little bit of sugar, no oil, that doesn't concern me. The big picture concerns me is we need to move collectively out, and the way to do that is make your voice being heard in a massive crowd. It's the only way. And I know we love our Macrobiotic health coaching program, and more students coming from other countries go back to their country and they light up their part of the world with it. So education is key. It's the only way forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, we always like to end on a little fun because we're into serious issues about, sometimes I think you and I might depress people with everything that's wrong with the world. But there's so much beauty in the world as well, every day as well. So can you share one of your funny experiences out of your 50 years of teaching, of which I'm sure there have been many?
There have been many, and they're very diverse. But when you ask me about this, when you flag this up, as you do all of the people who you interview, one particular instance came up to me, and that happened a long time ago, happened in the 1970s. And I was in India with a friend of mine, and we were traveling around, and he met a very wealthy and very influential gentleman who was an industrialist, and was the kind of person that has dinner with the prime minister and this and that and the other thing. This guy suffered from migraine headaches for the better part of his adult life, and in our naivete about the way that things should work, we just said, well, you can take care of that. All you have to do is change your diet. And so he latched on to us, and he adopted us, and we went to his home in Mumbai, which was Bombay then, and we started instructing his cooks. And he started eating the food, and he started feeling better. And he was losing his head. He couldn't believe it because he had traveled all over the world, gone to clinics in Switzerland and Germany and America. He'd gone everywhere trying to get these things cured, and nothing could cure his headaches. And they were really bad headaches. They were kind of headaches that put him down on his back. And so we went with him to his house in Jaipur, and he was having this big, elegant banquet for some dignitaries. And this was the most elegant dinner I've ever been to in my life. And we had to really hustle to figure out how we could get some clothes that looked appropriate. And he had, we're talking about real silverware, silver dishes and gold on the table and crystal and everything. And as dinner was served to everyone, and then he was going to make a little speech about his diet, the new diet that he went on. And he referred to us as his American doctors. And we kept telling him, we're not doctors. And he said, no, you're my doctors, right? And so he introduced us as his doctors, and he stood up and he gave this speech about how wonderful it was that he had cured his headaches and he was a new man. And the servants brought out these 3 plates of food, one for each of us and one for him. And they made a big show of taking the lid off the plates, and there was just this big pile of red food, right? Red food. And he didn't miss a beat. He just looked at it and said, sometimes it looks a little unusual, but it's really delicious. And the guests were all looking at it, trying to disguise their looks of horror. And I looked up at the window, because there was a little window on the door through to the kitchen, and there were all these faces up in the window looking out very concerned. And after dinner, I went back and I said, what happened to the food? And the head cook told me, I'd been in earlier in the day and I planned a menu out for them, but they had steamed everything at the end in these tall steamers, and they had put beetroot in on the top.
Oh, no way!
It had dyed all the food, so all the food was bright red. And the 3 of us sat at the end of the table eating this food, looking like, this is so delicious, and it was terrible.
Oh, wow, fantastic.
But he was very generous about it, And it's a funny thing. This guy, I lost track of him. About 15 years later, I was back in America, and I had gone back to England, and then I had gone to America. I got a letter from India, and in the letter was a little note from this man who had tracked me down, right, all the way to America,
Incredible.
thanking me, for introducing him to a different type of food and telling me that he still hadn't had any headaches after all that period of time. So it was about 15 years, 20, yeah, about 15 years, I guess, since the thing. But, the thing that impressed me about him was that he had had such a dramatic change in his health that he didn't care. It could have been black food. It could have been food. It could have been crawling off the plate. He was so happy, and he was just proud of it. He was willing to share it with all these people.
So beautiful, beautiful. I think that's a big part of what's wrong really with society. There's not so much sharing or acknowledgement anymore. I don't know, but that's what I feel. I mean, when clients come here, I'm saying, please share. Share with your family, share with your friends. It's not about pushing us out. It's about pushing the work out. That there are other alternatives, than taking medication or being miserable. You should be able to jump out of bed every morning, no matter if you're 50, 60, 70. 74 nearly, husband, rock on, and you can still outcycle me in the bikes. I need to get my head around that one. Well, Mr. Tara, I want to thank you for your time. You've trained thousands and thousands and thousands of people around the world in your 5 decades of teaching. You've you've changed the lives of thousands of people. I mean, I know sometimes you get letters from even 25, 30 years ago. People are finding you in social media and it's so lovely getting in touch to say, hey, remember back then. So you're a gift to the world. I'm very honoured to be interviewing you and very happy in my wee heart and soul every day to be your wife. So thank you for all your work.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Di.